It's that time. Everything and anything basketball, presented by The Outrage. With Kajan and and host Spencer Byers, this is Polar Opposites.
Hello, everyone. Polar Opposites, a little later than usual, but still regularly scheduled programming. Kajan, Thiru, Thani, Castelum, alongside myself, Spencer Byers. Thank you for joining us today. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff I'm happy we kind of waited on because continuing things to develop. So we'll start off with, I think, the biggest story that came out yesterday, I think mid-afternoon. Kelly Oubre Jr. got struck by a car. Yes, he was hit. And as a pedestrian, might I add. So he was walking in downtown Philadelphia in the center city district when he got hit by a car. He is okay. That's why I'm happy we waited. He is okay. He does have fractured ribs and is week to week right now for the 76ers. They're going to observe him, and they're basically 1 week right now, and they're going to reevaluate basically every week. So that's why I say week to week for Kelly Oubre Jr. So thank goodness Kelly Oubre is all A-OK relatively, because obviously, Cajun, when you get struck by a car, it can be a hell of a lot worse than just fractured ribs. So happy to hear that Kelly Oubre Jr. is all right with all that's being said.
Mm-hmm.
And also being released from the hospital. Obviously, when he got hit, he was sent to the hospital, but he was released on Saturday, by end of Saturday night. And now he's been obviously evaluated by the Philadelphia 76ers team. And happy to hear that the 76ers are kind of rallying around Kelly Oubre because they did play a game not too long after Oubre was out for the team. They played against the Indiana Pacers, and I would say blew the doors off them, but they really didn't in the end. They only won 137-126, but 50 points from Tyrese Maxey propelled them to that win. He had 50 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. So a guy you and I, Cajun, did put in our top 10 position rankings, me as a point guard, you as a shooting guard, but regardless, he now playing the point guard. Now playing the point guard position, Cage, because of obviously James Harden being gone. He's looking mighty good right now for the Philadelphia 76ers, who are leading the Eastern Conference at 8-1. 6 wins in a row, might I add.
Hey, man.
Actually, that's a lie, Cage. 8 wins in a row before I may tell a lie. So technically it is 6 in a row, but it's 8 in a row. Go ahead.
And that one loss was to the Bucks, and I was only by 1 point. Might I add. So you look, dare I say it, he looks like a bona fide MVP contender. And I never thought I'd be saying that. With Embiid on that, and with Embiid on the team, but he's really he's exceeded expectations from the get-go since he was drafted. Might I, and also, this is the thing that just blows my mind. He was drafted 21st, I believe, in the 2019 NBA draft, or was it 2020?
Well, I'm going to check, but I will say, Cage, to add to your point, he also will continue to add to the legacy of Coach Calipari in Kentucky, because he was part of Kentucky. So he is, I was going to say Wildcat, trying to make sure they were the Kentucky Wildcats before I tell a lie. He was 21st in 2020, Cage. He was a 2020 draft pick by the Philadelphia 76ers. So again, he's adding to the lineage, the ridiculous amount of guards that have come out of Kentucky. And Cajun, you and I can go on the list. Kyrie Irving was Duke, but Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm trying to think of some others, Cage. They're big. Drew Bledsoe, John Wall, both went to Kentucky. Now, maybe not all-star, or they were both all-stars, even before Wall with the Achilles. And just there's so many talented guards that have come out of Kentucky, and they continue to come out of Kentucky, like Cason Wallace right now with Oklahoma City looking really good right now coming off their bench. A lot of really good guards, and Maxey is putting himself up there with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as maybe the best one in the NBA right now.
And it's kind of changed drastically how Philly's going to look. It got to the point where will Embiid demand a trade next? But with Maxey's ascension, Philly's looking mighty good, and I gotta say, Spencer, I don't know how there were 20 guys drafted ahead of Maxey in the draft that he was in. He got drafted 21st. His ascension led to Philly moving on from Ben Simmons. His rise as a lead playmaker also led to them moving on from James Harden. So I'm happy for the kid. Um, you and I are both fans of his game. And I think the ranking that we had him for our top 10 positional rankings, whether it was shooting guard or point guard, you had him at 10 on point guard. I had him at 9. He's exceeded expectations and then some. So super happy for him, and the scary part is he's only going to get better.
You'd have to expect.
And as for Kelly Oubre Jr., you never hear guys like get involved in a car accident, let alone involved in a hit and run. So this was scary. This was scary to hear, and I'm happy nothing has. I'm happy that he's okay. He did have a fractured rib. It's just it's scary to hear stuff like that, and he was actually filling in a really good role for them, like whether it was starting or coming off the bench, a much needed scoring punch too. That Philly team is looking right now like maybe the best team in the East. Obviously, Boston has something to say about that, but they're looking really good. They're looking really good, and I think Embiid's got to be Embiid, and like the Sixers organization and Nick Nurse, they all have to be thrilled with how things have shaped up ever since Harden got traded. Maybe Harden leaving Philly was his greatest assist ever.
Maybe. Now, Cage, and I'm looking right now at the 2020 NBA draft class. He did go 21, of course, as you and I mentioned, to the Sixers. The draft goes as follows. So number 1 overall pick was Anthony Edwards. Draft pick number 2, James Wiseman, who has not developed into what people thought he would be or I thought he would be coming out of Memphis. LaMelo Ball went 3 to the Hornets. Patrick Williams went number 4 to the Bulls. That draft pick continues to you'd say, disappoint for the Bulls. And then the next pick I would say disappoints for the Cavaliers. Isaac Okoro was drafted by the Cavs at number 5. The Hawks got Okonkwo at 6. The Pistons got Killian Hayes at 7. Knicks draft Obi Toppin at 8. We both know I'm a fan of his game, who has not sadly completely developed in either New York and now in Indiana. Hopefully he'll be able to get some more game time in Indiana. And then Denny got drafted by the Wizards at 9. Jalen Williams got drafted at 10 by the Suns. The Spurs got Devin Vassell at 11. The Kings got Tyrese Halliburton at 12. So I think Halliburton and Maxey were both drafted in the same draft. Ridiculous. And then a kid I've never heard of before, Cage. Kyra Lewis Jr. was 13th overall by the Pelicans. Aaron Naismith got drafted by the Celtics at 14. He's now with the Indiana Pacers. Cole Anthony went 15 to the Magic. Isaiah Stewart was drafted 16 by the Blazers and then ended up obviously on the Pistons. The Timberwolves draft Cage. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, so I'm going to try it. Pokusevsky? With the Thunder?
Pokusevsky. Yep.
Yes. He got drafted by the Timberwolves at 17, was traded to the Thunder on draft day. Josh Green was drafted 18 by the Mavericks. 19 by the Nets was Sadiq Bey, obviously traded later to the Pistons in the end. And the pick just before Tyrese Maxey, the Miami Heat select Precious Achua.
Wow.
And Cage, do you want to know another really good guard that got drafted in this draft? Actually, a couple more really good guards that got drafted in this draft. So after Maxey at 21, Emmanuel quickly got drafted at 25 by the Thunder. Obviously, ended up at the Knicks. Peyton Pritchard got drafted at 26, and then Desmond Bane got drafted at 30. All those guys are guards, and all those guys are really good. And Jaden McDaniels also got drafted at 28. He's not a guard necessarily, but really talented ball players.
Yeah,
so a lot of really, really good guards in 2020, man.
Oh man, that That 2020 draft might, it might go down as an all-timer based off of the talent that's there. Obviously, there's been some bust there.
No,
Um,
yeah, but there's bust in every draft, right? And some of those guys still come good. Like Wiseman still could come good. Okonkwo is going to get more minutes as they probably phase out Capella down there in Atlanta. You hope Obi Toppin kind of fixes his development. Um, obviously Naismith's been looking really good right now in Indiana. Cole Anthony, a lot of guards in Orlando. We'll see if he can carve out a spot truly.
mhm.
And then you've got again the guys of like Pritchard, who is carving out a really good role with Boston quickly. Same thing in New York. Bane right now is probably the best player, arguably with Triple J in Memphis without Ja being available. A
Yep.
lot of really talented players coming out of the 2020 draft, which again is really nice to see. Is I remember that draft was kind of funny because Anthony Edwards came out of just about nowhere to go first overall out of Georgia, because I knew everyone was looking at Wiseman at Memphis, but then he had the beginning season suspension, played one game, and then got suspended again and was done for the rest of the season. I watched his first and only game in college, might I add. I watched it because I liked that Memphis team. That Memphis team had some ballers on it, and I liked Penny Hardaway as their coach. And then Wiseman got suspended for the rest of the year, and I went, well, there goes their season and my future bet on them winning the national championship. So I was very impressed, might I add. Very impressed. Now on, as we mentioned, with the 76ers being the leaders right now in the Western Conference at 8-1 above the Celtics, who are 8-2 currently.
Mhm.
On to some teams that aren't doing so well. The Los Angeles Clippers right now just outside of the play-in situation right now, but are obviously really early in the season. Only 9 games played for LA. But the worrying part is 3-6, but 4 of those losses have been in a row since acquiring James Harden from those Philadelphia 76ers. They've really struggled with that lineup of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden.
Man.
And
Uh,
it's definitely been hard to see. And I'm not going to say James is the only problem, but it is definitely not looking good right now if you were cheering for the other team in LA.
Brian Damaris, Mavs announcer. I don't know if you heard that. His soliloquy on James Harden.
I didn't. It must have been very funny.
Let me see what is there. I'm going to ask the producer to pipe this into the Clippers' locker room so I can talk to you, James. I hope you're taking note. I get on my knees every night and pray for someone to believe in me like Daryl Morey believed in you. You wanted a certain coach, they brought in D'Antoni. You wanted to play a certain style, they played it. You wanted Dwight Howard, they brought him in and got rid of him when you were tired of him. Same thing with Chris Paul. They brought in your old friend Russell Westbrook. You wanted to go to Vegas on your off days, they looked away. You wanted the team to stay over so you could go out at night. They changed the schedule, and it didn't work. You said, I'm going to break up with my whoopee, not good enough. I see the bright lights of New York. I want to go there with KD. It's going to work. The big three with Kyrie. And after 1 year, you wanted out. You realized, oh God, I took this guy for granted, the guy that believed in me. I want back with Morey. They traded Ben Simmons for you. How did they pull that off? And you know what? You went there and you got a partner who won MVP. He got the MVP. And then what did you say afterwards? They didn't hand me the reins. You're the point guard. You were holding the reins. And what did you do when you had the reins? You scored 9 points in game 7 against Boston. You blew a 3-2 series lead. Now that's already, I was like, damn. That was already damn as it was. But he wasn't done. So they fired their coach. Not good enough. You broke up with the guy who believed in you again. He said, bright lights of LA. That's where I want to go. Let's see if that works. Listen, James, and this is continuing what he's saying. Have you ever had those friends who had bad roommates? Over and over again, they complained about their bad roommates. They never thought to be self-aware enough that they're the bad roommate, they're the problem. Hey, James, you're the problem. If it doesn't work this year in this system with this team, then you're going to go and point fingers at everybody else, and you're going to go home and start swiping right for another team, like on Tinder. He didn't say like on Tinder, that was just me. There's not going to be anybody left because, James, You're not the beard. You're not the system. You're the problem. Now it's 4 games in, but those words, he probably was saying what you were. He literally said what you were thinking.
I don't disagree with any one thing he said. I don't, because I think he's probably right in a lot of that judgment. In Harden being pampered for so long since he left Oklahoma City, that it is going to be hard for him to come back down to earth of, you are not the guy anymore. You are not the number one option anymore.
You're not that guy.
And I don't know what James Harden wants, I guess is kind of the problem, Cage. Because, and again, I think this is a problem with fans and then ownership and team management and then the players. What do they want? Because, Cage, most fans, I won't say all, but majority of fans, especially me, and I'd say you as well, our goal is to win a championship. Our want and desire is to win, and to win a lot, and to win often. I would say management is almost always that same way. They want to win. Ownership is 50-50. Some of them want to make money, some of them want to win. Sometimes you can make money and win. Normally that's not the case. Normally you will not make money to win a championship. Depends on the sport, but regardless. Sometimes those two things don't correlate. The athletes is normally where the sticking point comes in. I don't know if James Harden wants to win. And I mean that. I don't know. And as much as that may sound ridiculous, because we always just think, well, of course he wants to win. I'm not saying he's not competitive, but what action has James Harden ever shown us to say he wants to win? Like, genuinely, Cage. What's one thing that James Harden has done to show us he wants to win? He stuck out in Houston, making all that money, doing whatever he wanted, as was just explained in that long soliloquy, that long monologue. He did the same thing in Brooklyn, in New York.
I think I can't believe I'm saying this, but in fairness to him, Brooklyn had a lot more problems.
Oh no, he definitely was not the only problem. He probably wasn't even the main problem, I would say, in Brooklyn. But regardless, when situations don't work out and you start pointing the finger, as he explained with the roommate analogy, I would even say in the relationship analogy, when you keep losing friends and you blame them, normally it's not their fault. Sometimes it is. Sometimes somebody goes out of your life and it's their fault. You know? Sometimes they gotta hold their hands up and say, you know what, I was kind of the worst part of that relationship. But when it happens 10, 12 times with friends, maybe you're the problem. Maybe you gotta look inside and go, you know what? Why is every person I become a friend with leave me after a year or two? Why? You know, and again, that goes back to, I don't know if James Harden wants to win. I think James Harden wants to be a star in the NBA. I think James Harden wants to score and do all of those things. And it's more of a lifestyle thing than it is a winning thing. And I'll say it's more like AI. And I'm not trying to say Allen Iverson didn't want to win. I know Allen Iverson wanted to win, but Allen Iverson wanted to win his way. And it was proven in multiple locations that the way Allen Iverson wanted to win wasn't going to be enough. And he proved that in every location he went to. That the way Allen Iverson wanted to operate was not going to be optimal. It wasn't. The only time he made a championship, Cage, was the only year he actually listened to his coach. And ironically, it was to a Hall of Fame coach. Larry Brown, who won a championship not too long after that with the Detroit Pistons, who he left the Sixers for. Allen Iverson's Sixers, because he and Allen Iverson could not get along. And I'm not comparing Harden to Iverson either, in either like their games respect, but it feels like Harden wants to win his way because he is, as he said, I am the system. I am a system. I think he wants to win his way. And he's going to find out, like Allen Iverson did, that you can't win like that. Not every athlete can win playing their way. Some guys can. Some guys can be Tom Brady and win their way. Sometimes Allen Iverson, you can't win your way. You got to listen to the other guy, your coach, your teammates, whatever. And hopefully James Harden figures that out and says, okay, I can't win my way. So I got to listen to Tyronn Lue. I got to listen to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And in fairness, more likely Kawhi, because Kawhi's won things in the NBA. Paul George has not. Westbrook has not. And NBA championships, I mean.
Mm.
So
And honestly, like with the way they've been struggling, I'd honestly have Harden come off the bench.
well, you think somebody's gotta,
I
because
think
Harden
West
right now is averaging 13.5 points a game with only 4.3 assists. So he's not even, having that amazing passing numbers he was having in Philadelphia when he led the league in assists last year.
Mhm.
So it's just not clicking for him right now in LA. So maybe he does need to start off the bench, or flip him and Westbrook, do every other game kind of thing. I'm not really sure what Tyronn Lue is going to do. But and again, these guys, only 4 games in, they're going to acclimate. They're going to win games. They have enough talent to win games. But again, you look at the goal of a team built like this, which obviously is a championship, and will they be able to win a championship? I don't know. I don't know. I'm openly not a fan of Tyronn Lue. I will reserve judgment because of this team. But when you've got 4 guys who are MVP candidates, MVP winners, Finals MVP winner, scoring title,
Mhm.
All NBA defense, All NBA first team, second team, third team, you got to win. You got to find ways to win. And right now they're doing exactly the opposite. They're finding ways to lose. So
Yeah.
I don't really know what the fix is. It's one of those kind of stupid things where I just say you got to fix it. Do I know how to fix it? No, of course not. But I'm not the guy being paid to fix it. And if I was, I'd figure out a way to fix it, wouldn't I? Or I would leave because I'd say I can't fix that. I'm just not equipped to do that. And sometimes that's true. I'm not saying Tyronn Lue ain't that, is not the guy to be able to fix this. I bet you he is. Because he's dealt with LeBron, he's dealt with Kyrie, he's dealt with personalities like that.
Mhm.
But I hope that Harden figures it out before it's too late, unlike Iverson, where he didn't figure it out till well too late, that you can't win your way. Or he is going to wake up out of the league at 35, 36, still being able to play in the league, but running himself out of enough teams to play him in the league, which happened to Allen Iverson, which happened in football to Terrell Owens, which happened in the NFL to Chad Johnson. Chad Ochocinco, if you didn't know, he's Chad Johnson before that. He
Mhm.
might play himself out of the NBA. And I don't want to see that for an athlete that I think is supremely talented. I just hope Harden figures it out. But I don't think he will, because when you've been pampered for so long, it's really hard to break those type of trends, break those type of tendencies.
And like, I know you made that comparison about Allen Iverson, but Iverson worked for what he had to get to, because a basketball career wasn't in the works for him after he got arrested. So he may have played his way. So like at least when Iverson played his way, even if Iverson tried to play his way and he learned the hard way that it didn't work out, he had to bust his behind to get to the point to where he is. Now, yeah, he has yes man, which superstar doesn't.
I was more meaning Cage when they got into the NBA. I'm not saying their workout to the league was the same, because obviously the Allen Iverson story is an inspiration. If you didn't know it, Allen Iverson, when he was in, I think it was high school, not even college. He was in high school before he went to Georgetown. He was at a bowling alley, and I think a gang fight basically broke out, and he left. But the white side of the gym decided to say that he was there and was an acting party in it, and got him not just arrested, thrown him in jail, and they were going to incarcerate him for years. They were going to sentence him to years basically at a trial. and enough petitions were sent and enough letters were sent that they ended up releasing Allen Iverson. He was able to go to Georgetown and play out, his college career, and then obviously make it to the NBA. Harden obviously did not have that type of tumultuous road, but them in the NBA, the Allen Iverson not taking practice seriously, not showing up to practice, being late to practice, obviously with the iconic presser about we talking about practice, as much as that was a funny bit, and then the one with the Pistons where how many
And that
how many
and
two-time
that
scoring
pre-
champions are sitting coming off the bench? How many former MVPs are coming off the bench? And he's not wrong in saying that, but again, it's you have to know you can't win your way, and Allen Iverson never learned that in the NBA. I
mm,
hope Harden does learn that the former MVP can come off the bench. The former scoring champion can come off the bench.
thing is, I think the biggest difference between Harden and Iverson, you could never deny he wanted to win. Do you want to win his way? Yeah, but you couldn't deny that he wanted to win. I can't say the same for Harden. I can't unequivocally say the same for Harden. And that's scary. It's like as a former MVP, like you cannot have a volatile postseason like he just had last postseason in which he opened up the second round with a 40 piece and then had a 40 piece in game four and then had what was it, two, three, four stinkers of like single digit games? Everywhere he's gone, turmoil happens. And it makes you wonder, like, and Damaris hit it right on the head. You can't call yourself a system if the system hasn't worked. At some point he's gotta take a deep look at himself in the mirror and realize he's gotta adjust. He's gotta do something else to not only stay in this league but to also win. And maybe he will do that. But based off of his history, I'm gonna reserve that for further judgment until he actually proves it.
Well, we'll see if the Clippers can turn it around and if Harden can turn it around for the other Los Angeles team. But going on to a couple of tonight games, the Celtics beat the Knickerbockers 114-98. The Raptors 21-1 run. Yes, 21 points to 1 over the Washington Wizards to steal a win at home over the Wizards 111-107. Cage, you were there at
I
Scotiabank.
gotta I gotta pull off a you. I gotta pull off a King Julian like Spencer. I cannot believe it.
You cannot believe this?
I cannot believe this. Like I actually wanted them to lose so bad. The way that they played throughout those first three quarters just left me disgusted. I was like, how are you letting these clowns, no disrespect to the Wizards, but Jordan Poole kind of engages in like ridiculousness and Kuzma with his tats, but I digress. Um, how is that team on the second night of a back-to-back nonetheless? Because they played the previous night against Brooklyn.
Hmm.
How do you? How, and you got blown out against Boston
Hmm.
the game before. You can't fall flat like that to one of the worst teams in the league. I thought, here we go again. This is Portland all over again. It was worse in Portland because at least that Portland game was close. They just couldn't
Hmm.
shoot the ball. Nothing went right. Like I think first half they had more shot clock violations than made threes. 3-2.
Hmm.
Kuzma was having his way.
Hmm.
Gaffer was having his way. Um, man, it did not look good. And I'm like, if you're gonna play a game like that, you might as well just like lose. Like
Yeah.
I was open, like that can't happen. Then a funny thing happened. They started pressuring, and you know and it led to I think 2 or 3 turnovers. You know what that reminded me of? Remember that 30-point comeback in 2019-20 against Dallas?
I think I know what you speak of.
Hmm?
I think I know what you speak of.
It reminded me of that. I'm like, could it be? Could this really be happening? And you know what? Like, may have happened. They may have shown up late to the party, but they did what they were supposed to do in that fourth quarter and just straight up locked them up. Because I think Kuzma hit a free throw to make it 107-92. I believe, yeah. No, wait. No, it was 107-92, yeah. They didn't score the rest of the way. And I'm watching this game and I'm throwing my hands up in the air. It's like, where in the hell was this 3 quarters ago? Like, and give credit to Pascal Siakam. Man was the only consistent guy that showed up offensively. Scotty Barnes did his thing defensively. Chris Boucher with some big minutes too. I think what really made me happy, but I think out of all that annoyance and whatnot, I think the part that really made me the happiest was Malachi Flynn being on the floor in those key moments late, and the Wizards trying to target him on 5 different occasions to try to score on him, and they went 0 for 5. A year ago or 2 years ago, you wouldn't see Malachi floor. You could see Malachi Flynn on the floor in a close game in the G League. So it's just heartwarming it's heartwarming to see a guy like being trusted to be on the floor in crunch time, and he was a plus 12. With that being said, though, big win, but it should have never ever gone to that point. And next game's against Milwaukee. The last time Milwaukee was in that building, the Raptors and probably ran him out of the gym. So you know Milwaukee's going to come in guns blazing. That sort of effort that happened against Washington can't happen, but a big win nonetheless, especially with how that game started.
I will mention Malachi Flynn was a good defender at San Diego State at SDSU. It just hadn't translated to the NBA yet. And again, you know what's sad, Cage? Is Nick Nurse had a great start with the Philadelphia 76ers. It's worked in Philadelphia. And it's worked for Toronto. You know how many divorces in sport work like that? You know how many? Very few. Very, very few coach team splits work for both teams. Very few.
Mhm.
Immediately, of course. So usually the team obviously like with the Eagles when they fired Andy Reid. The Eagles were not a great team really after that. Yeah, they had I think a decent year the next year. I think it was with Chip Kelly, but then it went to garbage under Chip Kelly. Like everywhere else, he was in the NFL, and then they hired Doug Peterson, which basically was the clone of Andy Reid because he was offensive coordinator in Kansas City. Regardless, Kansas City got really good with Andy Reid, and they're now even better with Patrick Mahomes. And now the Eagles look great with Nick Sirianni, who was the offensive coordinator for their offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. I know, convoluted, but regardless, it's really, really hard to find splits in sport where they work for everybody. This is one. The Sixers got a really good coach in Nick Nurse, and the Raptors got what they needed, a guy who was going to make them be less selfish, develop the young guys, and have fresh ideas. And because again, to add to the point about Nick Nurse was the assistant under Dwayne Casey. So you basically were getting a Dwayne Casey disciple to run the team. You hadn't had fresh ideas in the organization for over a decade. Darko was the first guy to come in with fresh ideas in so long in the Toronto Raptors organization. It is nice to see the Raptors kind of absorbing those new philosophies, the passing, the defense, etc. Because we don't know how good defensively they were. They were good. They've been good defensively. Been a good defensive team for a while now. But it's nice to see that continue with a new offensive identity, with a new head coach that's younger, more vibrant, letting the young guys kind of play a little bit more, unlike what Nick Nurse did.
Mhm.
So it's nice to see both of these teams kind of thriving. Obviously, the Raptors are not a great team, and they're kind of flirting with that play-in situation right now. But you're still seeing growth, which is exactly what you want to see from a young team that's going through a transitional period like the Raptors are.
Yeah,
So definitely a polite sight to see the Raptors right now with Coach Darko Rajakovic.
couldn't agree with you more.
To another team, we're kind of skipping over the Celtics today because they did get a big win. I'll say technically last night, but tonight because Kate and I are recording this at about 1 a.m. So Monday just concluded with the Celtics beating the Knicks to make the Celtics 8-2. We're going
Yep.
to talk about Memphis because their head coach, Taylor Jenkins, was very unhappy with the officials. As again, Memphis right now are the basically worst team in the West. They're tied for second worst team in all of the NBA currently. And
Big
their
win.
head
Big.
coach is not happy. What?
mm, Yeah. Big win though against the Clippers.
Huh. On their 5-game losing skid, 0-4 with James Harden. I mean, they seem pretty easy to beat right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I didn't think it'd be the Grizzlies. But anywho, I rewatched that game. That had to be one of the worst officiated games of the season. The sequence that led to Jaren Jackson Jr. being ejected was he got hacked twice in a row, no calls. He came to figure out he tried to go to the ref and figure out where is the call at. Ref uses this reasoning that he charged at him, and that's why he tossed him. I don't know about you, Spence, but these refs in the NBA, at least this season, are giving off main character energy. None of us came to see y'all. None of us came to see the referee show. Aside from maybe James Williams, who looks like Gucci Mane, but still. Um, they're making it about themselves, and what's worse about it is Taylor Jenkins did the right thing and stood up for his guys. But there's no accountability with refs, and if there is, it's not public. Because what did Taylor Jenkins really say that was wrong about that game? And yet he got fined 25K. So how else are the referees supposed to be criticized? Because apparently nothing's being done about it. And I think what's scary and what might be scary is that with this sort of like aura the refs are on, it only takes one player to lose their cool. Now, I'm not saying something like the Malice in the Palace is going to happen, but the way this is going, I fear one, it's not going to get better anytime soon unless you have multiple teams, like multiple coaches that just like cuss out the refs in front of the media. Or two, and this might be far fetched, but it escalates to the point where a ref might catch hands.
Well, I would say the very least, Cage, we might see what happened when Rasheed Wallace got suspended for threatening a referee, which ironically was Tim Donaghy, of course, famous for the scandal of allegedly throwing games or altering games because of gambling. Is where you know Tim Donaghy's name from. But yeah, Rasheed Wallace got suspended for allegedly threatening Tim Donaghy. And and again, depending on who you tell us the story, depends on how that situation went down. And I'm not here to speculate on it because it happened a long time ago. And Rasheed Wallace said, I wanted to talk. And Tim Donaghy said he was waving his fists at him and he felt threatened, which, hey, I wasn't the interpreter. Go ahead.
You're out, or was that something else?
Hmm?
Was it like the whack you're out?
No, it was off the floor. It was already after he had been suspended, or like already after he'd been ejected in the game, and he went to talk to him after the game, and that's where he got suspended for threatening a referee.
Okay.
I'll be honest, Cage. What I want to see, and I don't know if I know this won't fix it, but I feel like it would make fans and teams a lot happier. Mic up every ref. Mic up every ref, so you can review footage and figure out, because the problem isn't bad calls. The problem isn't missed calls. The problem is accountability, and the problem is communication. Like, genuinely, Cajun, today, I sent it to you on Instagram. I watched today. It was a European referee who spoke English. And he was mic'd up, and he was refereeing a European game. Can't tell you which league, can't tell you what teams, but he was a ref. And he would call fouls, he would not call fouls, he would give warnings, keep your hands out, watch your hands, stuff like that. And when he would call a foul, and the guy would come over and ask him, he would explain what he called. And at the very end of the video, he gets asked, like, why'd you call that? Like, you're saying you respect me, but then you called that. And he goes, well, this is what I saw. And he goes, well, I didn't do that. And he goes, well, you didn't. Well, maybe I'm mistaken. That's what I saw, so that's what I called. But maybe I'm mistaken. Like, he openly admitted to the player, but maybe I'm mistaken, which again immediately makes you okay. You saw something. Maybe you're wrong, and you're okay admitting that. Exactly. Being okay being wrong is what players want to hear. And obviously, in certain situations, it doesn't really matter if you're wrong or not. You can't be wrong, kind of thing. But the accountability and the communications what athletes want. When it's like, well, I didn't travel. Well, yeah, you did. And you explain to them, oh, okay, yeah, I did do that. And they keep walking. If you explain to the athletes what they're doing wrong, you won't have as many problems.
Mm-hmm.
Or why you don't make a call, or why you did make a call. But there's no communication, and there's no accountability. So that makes everybody pissed off, because now it's like, pardon me, you look at them like, well, so there's no way for them to be disciplined that we know of. There's no way to prove what they're doing. And there's stuff that's blatantly happening. Like Triple J, Trevor Jackson Jr., who got tossed in that game when you talk about the atrocious officiating. He got tossed after getting 2 separate techs because he got hacked under the rim twice and didn't get the whistle. And as you mentioned, like, walked menacingly towards the referee, like did like kind of like shuffles toward the referee, like it was emphatic steps. And the ref immediately teed him up and tossed him. And then Jaren really gave it to him after he got ejected, because in baseball, get your money's worth. Might as well. You're already gone. What are they going to do to you now? Fine you?
Mm-hmm.
So the NBA needs to find a way to make referees accountable and communicate better, because those two things, I think, would mitigate a lot of the problems fans and more specifically players and teams have with the officiating. If they could just explain, like, hey, I didn't call it because I did call it because. Because even if they're wrong, at least the athlete's like, okay, I can understand what you're trying to tell me. As much as I think it's stupid or I think you're wrong, at least I can understand. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if those two things can happen, I think we have a chance of not fixing necessarily, but at least helping create a better environment for the way referees are treated and the way referees act. But at this point, I don't know if their NBA will do anything. And it was, as you mentioned, could escalate into situations that are not good for anybody. referees or teams or players or the league,
Mm.
might I add.
Yeah.
But we're now going to run through a couple other quick things, Cage. So Victor Wembanyama, the San Antonio Spurs, and Chet Holmgren, Oklahoma City Thunder, have their first matchup on Tuesday. So that would be technically today when this comes out. So tonight, Holmgren versus Wembanyama, Cage. A, who do you think wins the matchup? B, who do you think wins the game?
I think based off of like how each player is featured, I think Wemby's gonna win the matchup, but the Thunder are gonna win the game. Because Wemby's basically the focal, like arguably the focal point of the Spurs offense, unless you want to count Vassell and Keldon Johnson. But Holmgren, that's not the case with him because Shea is the top dog there. So I think Wemby's gonna get more points, so I think he's gonna be efficient with it. No, but I think he's gonna turn the ball over a lot, probably. But it's a sign of what to expect. It's a sign of it's going to be a first glimpse at the future of the NBA. And honestly, Spence, couldn't be more excited to see that. Could not be more excited to see that because they're unicorns in their own right. Chet's a guy who can space the floor. Um, transform a team's defense, rebound the basketball. He can do it all. At the same time, Wemby's a guard in a 7'2" body. And hey, this could be down the line a Western Conference Finals preview for years to come, based off how many draft picks the Thunder have and how bright the Spurs' future is now that Wemby's in the picture. So get strapped in, folks, because for the next decade, you might be seeing these two teams compete against each other in the playoffs.
In the Western Conference Finals, no less.
Mm.
But two more topics I want to hit before we go, Cage. Just quick, before we skedaddle. Go ahead.
Also, I can't go without shouting this out, and I was trying to watch this. I was literally trying to watch this, but there's no stream for NCAA women's ball, and it pisses me off. Shout out to Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark.
Oh, she's so good, isn't she?
Iowa's all-time leading scorer. They beat Northern Iowa on Sunday, and she had a triple-double.
She also beat Virginia Tech earlier. Remember we mentioned that Virginia Tech game? She did beat Virginia Tech 80-76, did Iowa. She had 44 in the win.
More than half of her team's points. So shout out to Caitlin Clark. Shout out to the to NCAA women's basketball. And for crying out loud, streaming services, get some streams in from NCAA women's ball, because I'm like, how am I finding men's streams but not women's?
That is definitely a good question, Case. Should mention some other big ranked games that went on going into today's episode. South Carolina beat Maryland 114-76, and making North Carolina the number one ranked team in the nation currently. Yes, South Carolina jumped to number one after LSU's opening night loss. They jumped Iowa as well, who are ranked 3 in the nation coming in. UConn losing to NC State, so UConn losing their second spot. So some already big losses there at the top of the women's charts. Stanford beat Indiana 96-64. So big win for the Ivy League Stanford over the Hoosiers in another ranked game. And that's basically it for ranked teams. But going on tonight, Utah. Utah, I'm not sure where they're ranked right now because again, the new rankings came out for the women's game, but it hasn't been updated on the score yet. So I'm not exactly sure what Utah and or Baylor are ranked, but they're both ranked on the score right now. So I assume that's going to stay a ranked game right now. So Baylor versus Utah tonight at 7:30. I assume it's in Waco. It is in Waco, so that's going to be a big game for Baylor to try to upset the top-ranked Utes. We'll have to see. Might try to find a stream for that one, Cage. Kalal should not be doing too much tomorrow or tonight. Going over to the men's pool. Just trying to see if there's any other big games that we could have missed. I should mention that because of Arizona's big win recently, that I actually will mention now, Arizona, the Wildcats under Coach Lloyd, former disciple of Coach Mark Few in Gonzaga, they knocked off number 2 Duke 78-73. So now Arizona's ranked number 3 in the nation in the men's pool. Currently, with making that Duke team fall pretty far in the standings. Michigan State also fell after their opening night loss to James Madison. They're now down to 18. And to mention that as well, James Madison ranked in the top 25 for the first time ever in their program's history since moving to Division I ball back in, I believe it was the late 70s, early 80s. So
Wow.
history for James Madison, for the Dukes.
Shout out to them. Big. And I also have to mention big upset against Michigan State, which kind
Opening
of
night.
propelled this. Yeah, which propelled them to this rise. So a lot of movement around in these rankings, whether it's men's and women's. So
The two
it's
teams
gonna
actually
be
follow. Go ahead, Gage.
no, go on.
I was just going to mention the two teams that fell out of the men's pool with James Madison jumping in. St. Mary's, who lost to Weber State 61-57, and then today, falling out for Villanova, lost to Penn. So the University of Pennsylvania, not Penn State, but the University of Pennsylvania, the Ivy League Penn, beat Villanova, ranked 22 in the nation, 76-72 yesterday / tonight. Any rank? Ooh, and Cage, you're going to love this. So tonight is the beginning of, I believe it's the Champions Classic, which means Duke's going to play Michigan State tonight, while Kansas will play Kentucky tonight. That's just the beginning of some big games of ranked teams. Marquette, I'm pretty sure they've moved up for number 5 in the nation. Let me make sure I check that quickly here as I go look at the new AP rankings. Marquette's number 4 in the nation. Marquette take on the Illini, who also moved up. So Illinois versus Marquette, ranked on ranked. Duke versus Michigan, ranked on ranked. Kansas versus Kentucky, ranked on ranked. Some big games in the men's pool going on tonight. And another game, sleeper game in my opinion. Creighton, ranked top 10 in the nation against Iowa. The Hawkeyes aren't ranked right now, 2-0 to start the year. I'm not going to say Creighton gets upset by the Hawkeyes, but I'm going to say the Hawkeyes give them a good ball game, even though they're away, even though they're at Omaha, even though they're at Creighton. I think Iowa's going to give them a game because Iowa's been a pretty good program the past 5 years. So some big games going on today, Cajun. Some big games going on both sides of the college ball, men's and women's. But lastly, as you mentioned, so we did mention college ball, so I do feel a little better about myself. But the final thing I want to mention, Cage, because I don't know how you didn't put it in the doc. I don't know how you missed it. Mike Malone of the Denver Nuggets got a contract extension from the Denver Nuggets. So he will be the coach for the foreseeable future with the reigning champs. It's a 2-year extension on his current deal, which ties him up with the franchise through 2026-27. So he's there for at least the next 4 years in Denver at Mile High.
No surprise right there. No surprise. He's really grown as a head coach, and ever since his days with the Sacramento Kings, it got to the point that when he got fired, Cousins questioned why. DeMarcus Cousins. Yeah, it's well deserved. It's well deserved. He's now an NBA champion. He's really empowered this Denver Nuggets team. He's gone to bat for them. He's grown as a head coach. He's really grown with that Denver Nuggets core. And I can't think of anybody else to lead that core than the guy who's been along with them for the ride. And I've also their bench has had some guys step up too with Christian Braun, Peyton Watson, Julian Strather. Coaching plays a role in that. So shout out to head coach Mike Malone, already an NBA champion, and now got a big fat contract extension. So good on him.
Good on I believe we placed him. Oh goodness, Cage, where did we place him? I got rid of that note. The physical note that I made. Where did we place Mike Malone in our top 5 coaches? Was he 3 or was he 4?
Might have been second.
He might have been second. No, he couldn't have been second because we had Spoelstra 1, and I believe we had Carlisle 2. So I think he must have been 3. I think he would have been above Steve Kerr, and I know he was above Mike Brown.
I swear we had him as 2 because he was an NBA champion.
Well, then I guess Carlisle's 3. But regardless, I knew he had him in the top 5, and I knew he was top 3. I just can't remember where we placed him because I know Spoelstra's number 1. But regardless, we had him a top 5 coach, and now he's coaching in Denver for the foreseeable future. And I would go as far as to say, unless something dramatic happens, he'll be there as long as he wants to be there, and the team wants him there. Which, at this point, they seem inseparable with how good the Nuggets have been playing this year and obviously last year.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So
and the way Denver is shaping out right now, he'll be there for a while. A lot longer than maybe 2026, 2027.
Definitely would expect so. So I will end off with this. Thursday, we'll be back for some more regular scheduled programming. With that, my goal for that episode, Cage, is we're going to talk about at least one NCAA game of ranked on ranked teams. If that's one of the games going on tonight, or if that's on Wednesday, or before we record. Or I guess we will be before we record on Thursday, depending on what time we record on Thursday. But regardless, I want us to watch one of the men's games and one of the women's games going on right now in college basketball. So I don't care if you watch a game and I watch a game, we break them down basically opposite each other, or if we watch the same game and we try to watch 2, or how we do it. But I want to be able to break down at least one men's college basketball game and one women's college basketball game. And then obviously talk about the NBA games that go on around. Of course.
I'm down for that. Let's do it.
So I'm not sure we'll do those live because it's regular season and who really cares. But we will try to have some reviews going on this coming Thursday for our next episode of regularly scheduled programming of Polar Opposites here on the Outrage Inc.